God, we're here. It's exciting. Oh my God, and we're here. We're here with Ann Hermes.
I'm here.
Hi, Ann. Thank you so much for joining us. This is like the most exciting part about reading books is when we get to talk with fabulous people that write them. We've already got people waiting around in the chat here. We got Molly. Hi, Molly, and Kelly, and Dee Marie is here. Hello, dear. And Janet. This is
Jenna, hey
afternoon.
guys.
Hi, Jen. I think we
Yeah,
also
Jen's here.
have some lurkers that are hanging around.
Yeah.
So
You just bumped up a bunch of people.
we won't start the evening with our barrage of announcements like we normally do because we have things to talk about. We have this wonderful book to talk about.
Yes.
We have questions. You are welcome to ask questions in the chat. We will read them aloud to Ann. And I say we get firing away.
Okay.
Okay.
Steph, take us away.
All right. Well, tell us everything. No. We would like it if you could tell kind of the story about how did this book come to be? How did this topic, get in front of you?
Well, I was collecting pillowcases, sort of accidentally, really, because I was collecting other things, doll quilts and big quilts and all sorts of things. And I saw a pillowcase and I said, what is this? Oh, that's a pillowcase. I said, oh, what's that? And I then suddenly it became very intriguing. What are these pillowcases? So I started looking for them and collecting them and started showing them at like our local quilt study groups and various places. And people said, oh, you should write a book, You should write a book. And I said, well, maybe I will write a book. And I kept, hearing that. And then I started thinking, well, I better write a book before somebody else writes a book on this topic. And coming from my my work life, which was research, you don't want to get scooped, right, by anybody. So you don't you don't let people know what you're working on. Although I had to let people know about this, and I thought I'm just going to do it. And it was a lot of going outside of my comfort zone to do this. I'll tell you that. But yeah, I did it because there wasn't a book there. There was a very little amount of information. And as a collector, I'm always looking for information about what I collect. I'm not a historian. I'm just accidental historian, kind of.
Oh, aren't we all?
Yeah, yeah. I think so. I think so. And so with the idea of writing a book, um, when having not done that before, I, looked around for publishers who do quilt related topics or history topics. And Schiffer, which is fairly local to here, it's about, about an hour from my house, out in Lancaster County. They seem the perfect fit because they already were publishing lots of quilt history books. And I put together a proposal, and one day I got a call and they said, oh, we've accepted your proposal. And then I got really scared because I thought, now I have to write something.
You have to actually write the book.
Yeah. And originally the concept was my pillowcases. Here they all are. Aren't they pretty? Lots of pictures. But then I realized very quickly that that wasn't going to be enough. I would have to find other sources for pillowcases, and that just saying, aren't they pretty, or putting a date was enough because they expected words too. So,
Right.
so I just did it. Okay. ... And it was done. But that's how I got started. And the people at Schiffer, another advantage to going to them, and there's some disadvantages too, but at the time I could use their photography studio. They have a studio and they would let you, they teach you how to use the camera and help you set things up. And so I was able to do that. If I had to hire someone to photograph everything, I couldn't have afforded it. It would have been too expensive.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I didn't know. I mean, Schiffer, I feel like Schiffer is kind of like, they're the gold standard for our community books,
Mhm.
they just make such great books. But I didn't even realize that. I knew they were East Coast, but I didn't realize they were that close. And
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know that they had photography facilities. Do they still have that, or is that something that they've
I would imagine so. And
yeah.
they also do, they have a photographer there who, at least at the time I was there, who would, you could hire them to do it, but you have to pay. But with digital photography now, the
Yeah.
only thing he really had to do was, get the camera set up for like shots of large quilts, there were only a few. And then when we were done with that, set it up for smaller things. And so I got the easy job most of the time. I just pressed the button, take photo. And I had at one point Barb Garrett and a friend of mine from work, Marianne Matthews. Um, they came out with me and did all the handling of the pillowcases and the bending over. Poor Marianne, yeah, she had to bend over a lot. Barb was smart. I don't know if Barb's online, but she was like, okay, here's the next one. Here's the next one. And then
She hasn't popped up in the chat yet, but
oh,
she's off and around.
yeah. And so we didn't get everything done in one session. And so I went back for another. I took my two boys who were probably freshmen in high school or something at the time. And Barb was there too, because she loves to go. Because she gets to see all the stuff.
Of course.
And so I asked the boys, you want to go help me? And they said no. And I said, well, you can have the day off school. And they said, okay.
Barb said she's here in the chat. I'm here.
Okay. She heard of.
That's such a fabulous resource. I would never even expect that with, being a publisher, but like, what a great way to bridge the gap for people that maybe don't have the funds to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
Like you said, hire a photographer. And if you're telling
Mhm.
me that like a book like this wouldn't exist with that barrier,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
like that's incredible. I would have never ever expected.
Yeah.
I also didn't know they were that. I didn't know they were in that area either.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
knew they were East
yeah.
Coast, but
Mhm.
yeah, they're really close to me.
Yeah, they are. There you
Careful,
go.
Steph, or people are going to start telling you it's time for you to write a book.
Well, I don't know about writing a book, but I will go schlep quilts for people if they are going to have them photographed at Schiffer. Because I'm nosy too. I like to see the stuff.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you, like from start to finish, from the time that they said, you're in, we want to publish this book, to the launch of the book? How long did that take you?
I think about 2 years. Say about 2 years.
Was that a long 2 years or a short 2 years?
Um, it was a long 2 years. But the biggest chore or task was to, once I knew I needed more material for the book, where am I going to find it? I mean, yeah, I have some friends who were collectors, and here's a pair, there's a pair. But I was able to start with one person, Trish Herr, who's since passed away now, but she's a big collector of Lancaster County, everything. And, contacted her about the pillowcases. Can I come and see your pillowcases? Oh, yeah, sure. Come on over. They fed me lunch. We looked at the pillowcases. And then she said, have you talked to Clark Hess? And I said, no, I don't know him. Oh, well, here's his contact information. And then I go to see him, and he's got even more pillowcases. Same thing. Well, do you know about that one that's at the Lancaster Historical Society? Now the Mennonite Living Museum out in Lancaster. I said, no, I don't know about that. So then I talked to them, and on it went. And I got to go to people's homes, a number of people, and see their collections, the Chris, the Moyers. Again, both of them have since passed. But all of these things that were like hidden away in dresser drawers and cabinets that I would have never seen, or none of you guys would have seen it until it came to auction eventually. I got access to it, and that was really something. And that, when I said I had to go out of my comfort zone, doing that, like cold calling people sort of, and saying, hey, my name's Ann and I'm writing a pillowcase book. But to the person, everyone was so nice and so helpful. And, I said, well, I'm going to have to take these to have them, to photograph them. No problem. Here, go ahead. Take them.
I have to say that's one of the best things about this collecting slash historian slash book writing community is the willingness to share.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that snowball of like, once you hit one person, the same thing happened to Stephanie when she was doing, a lot of her research. It's like, once you hit that one person, they go like, oh, then there's this, oh, and there's this, and then this person, and then before you know it, everything came to you. It's like you didn't even have to search high and low. It just starts falling on your lap. How long did it take to kind of gather all of that stuff in those photos? Did you kind of set like, okay, 6 months and boom, or was this like a slow trickle that happened where you didn't really know how much you had till the end?
What I did was I kind of, did all the legwork first, saw what everybody had. I took rough photos at their locations, and I knew, what I had access to. Then decided like what's going to work for the book. What do I have to have? Then I contacted everybody again. I said, okay, if you're mailing them, I need your things by this date. And then because I had the photo shoot set up, and then I went to visit all my friends in Lancaster, my new friends in Lancaster County, to pick up all the pillowcases. And then we just did it, within a week. And I really didn't want to have all these very valuable things in my possession for too long. I'm thinking, what if my house burns down? But anyway, so yeah, it was like that. And what I ended up doing, and Barb was at the first photo shoot, we did all the pillowcases that belonged to other people and skipped over mine. And then when we went for the second one, I did primarily the ones that I owned. So
just to spin off that a bit, do you have like a rough estimate of how many you had to leave out?
I didn't really leave too many out. I would say, well, okay, from what I saw, yeah, maybe, 25%. I didn't, because if I had something that illustrated a certain point,
Sure.
if it was the same thing,
You
but
don't need multiples of the same thing.
yeah.
I would almost argue that would be a good excuse for like a companion volume or something. Things, like how like movies, we have like the bloopers. It would only like things that didn't make it into the enjoy. Like I would buy something like that, just saying.
Yeah. Well, there was a limit of there was a rough limit on the number of photos for the book too, for what they thought they could sell, and the size of the book and the price and point. It had a certain number.
They must have some kind of like formula for all that, like the book industry.
Because printing more color pages is more expensive than not printing them.
Just another little spin-off question here for you. Did you have a lot of license in the design inside, or were you really beholden to your editor?
Well, they did the design and I liked it. So there was no, there were only a few things. Like there was one page that it's like it's like the centerfold page with like all those pairs of pillowcases lined up. That was their idea, but the way they had them laid out, I didn't like. So I just asked them to change it. And the cover was their idea, except for the 3 pillowcases in the middle of the cover. They actually put things that weren't pillowcases, were privy bags and stuff. And I thought, well, we really should probably do pillowcases on the cover. And so we changed that. But like the fonts and, the graphic stuff, that was all them. So that was great.
I remember you mentioning that FAQ piece in the beginning, that was your idea. So you
Yeah,
had some license over how it was presented.
Oh yeah. Well, as far as the writing part, they did nothing. They did absolutely no changes except to say that I was repeating things in the captions of the photo, and I was repeating the same information in the text. And I said, oh, okay. But so what? I mean, I did, so I took some of it out. The thing is, I had to have a lot of words. And what else can I say? But I think having it both places is fine. So I did take some things out under their direction, but I really got like they didn't even find any typos. I mean, I went back and found some as we were editing, but
That's awesome. I mean, I didn't
yeah,
notice any when I was reading, and I'm like the worst for like, oh,
no.
typo.
Well, if you do find any, let me know because I have my copy that I mark up with any corrections or if I sold a pillowcase, I mark it, or some of the pillowcases went from one person's collection down to Williamsburg.
Oh,
And
okay.
the lady at Williamsburg kept telling me, make sure you take note of that. So I said, okay, when we do the next printing, which won't ever happen, but um,
Never say never.
no. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, if you made a companion volume, you could have like some corrections or things like, changes from the first book
Yeah.
page kind of a thing, just a little
Yeah.
reminder.
Yeah. I'll put that on my list.
Um, do you, from going through this whole process, do you have any advice of anybody that would want to publish in this area?
Well, I would say it's a whole different world now from when I was publishing because of self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And for it, Schiffer was like my choice, my best choice at the time. I think today I might do it differently. Except for the photos. That's still a problem. Um, but I guess my advice is it's a labor of love. It's not a money-making operation. Maybe it can be. That's another thing that I'm not good at, and I didn't understand in the beginning that I'm not a good salesperson. And the author has to, if you want to sell a lot of books, you have to sell them. The publisher isn't going to, unless you're, Hillary Clinton writing a book where you get $1
Right.
million a paycheck for it. So I would say the one negative thing about Schiffer is they really didn't do a whole lot to push sales of the book at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I know if Dawn's on the line, Dawn Ronigan, she's did a Schiffer book and then subsequently has done self-publishing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think she's much happier with the control.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that something you think you might ever do, or is that a whole ball of wax you don't want to deal with?
I don't think I want to do that. I don't have the resources to, you know, the graphic design. I don't have that experience. Again, it would require hiring people or learning how to do it, or, setting up a photo studio in my room, in my home. Um, I haven't found something that I wanted to write about badly enough to do that at this
Mm-hmm.
point.
So,
But
Mm-hmm.
you guys all should.
Oh,
You all
I'll help you with the companion novel if you want to do that. We can set something up for photography. I'm on board.
well, yeah, I mean, and I loved gingham. So, if you just, I mean, I'll be your gingham shopper.
Oh.
If you ever want to write a book about that,
I guess
I'll
I
buy
guess
up all the gingham.
I guess I could write about my framed pillowcase, like the mystery, like a children's book, the mystery of the framed pillowcase.
That's right. And you could indicate that it was used to direct slaves on the Underground Railroad.
Oh
And
no.
I think that would make it sell really well.
I mean,
Oh dear.
it definitely could. Although I would have to say that like all of my friends would abandon me, and rightfully so.
I'm just kidding, by the way, everybody who's out there that doesn't know me very well. I'm just kidding.
Yes, just as a disclaimer, everybody, that is currently treated as myth and not fact. Just putting it out there. How many pillowcases would you say that you had in your collection during this time?
I probably had about 100.
Wow.
Oh,
Not a
I
hundred,
know.
like, yeah, I would say close to 100 maybe.
Yeah, I know at the beginning of the book you had talked about some of the collections that you'd seen, and I know I'd read. I guess was it? I don't think it was Jeanette Lasansky, but it was in one of her books,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
paper about it.
Mhm.
So, and this may be just a crazy question that you can't really answer, but I'm curious to know in terms of the fact that there are so few of these, compared to the plethora of quilts that come from this,
Mhm.
the Pennsylvania Dutch areas. Um, how many of those, like that older collection, have not like ended up in your hands and other people's hands? Like how I mean, I guess I'm probably not. I can't find the words to say this the way I really want to, but how many of them are there?
Yeah.
Like, and
Like,
how did they?
have we only
Yeah,
seen a certain percentage of what was ever
right,
made?
yeah,
Probably. And I would say that after the book was written, I had taken on this goal of myself. I'm going to document all the other pillowcases that weren't in the book that I see online, or I'm going to do a documentation, a spreadsheet, and I'll just have information and a picture. And I started doing that for a while. And then I realized, God, there's a lot more of these than I thought because they were sort of coming out of the woodwork a little bit. And I think there are a number of collectors in Pennsylvania area, southeastern Pennsylvania, and maybe, other places too, but who bought everything and have these cupboards filled with stuff. And they may even not know
okay,
they have. One of the pillowcase collectors that I went to, they had a beautiful old, 1700s farmhouse, and it was, filled with stuff. And I asked them if they had any examples of a plain, like blue and white check woven pillowcase. So I could use that as a comparison. People were using these pillowcases, they were pretty simple. And he looked at his wife and they just started kind of giggling. And he went over to a cupboard and like an armoire high cupboard, and opened it up, and it was all stacked with check bedding, not just
my gosh,
pillowcases, but
sheets and things.
the bolster covers that they used, and because they were matching sets. And he had more than anybody could ever want or need. Because I mean,
Wow.
how many, but he bought everything. He collected a lot of different things, a lot of textiles. And they go into somebody's blanket chest and aren't seen again until, I hate to say it, but until they pass away. And then,
Hmm.
they go to auction, and then we go around again, and they get out in the market. So I would say there were a lot more pillowcases than I ever thought. I still think quilts outnumber them because I don't think everybody made pillowcases to match quilts or to use in this way. So
I'm
So
surprised that
those
even
Lancaster hoarders.
they're hoarders, antiques hoarders.
I'm surprised too that in our reading here and in people reading along with us sharing pillowcases, that there were some that you still hadn't even seen.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. I thought for sure Anne's seen these. She's gonna be like, oh, I saw that one on this date and this time, and that there was stuff that you haven't seen. So that must be, I feel like when you're doing deep research on anything,
Mhm.
by the time you're done, you did a good job if you are just sick of it. Like
Yeah. Oh,
you don't
yeah.
want to look at it, throw it away. I've had enough. And I feel like for some people that do deep research, especially if they've looked at almost all the examples of something, then it's like really just anticlimactic because it's like there's nothing else to see. But it's exciting when there's still things for you to come up that you
Mhm.
haven't, that you
Yeah.
can't be sick of since you haven't seen it.
Well, if you
Um,
can see behind me, there's 3 pillowcases hanging up,
mhm.
and none of those are in the book. These are examples that I found afterwards. They're all
Oh,
applique. And if I had had them, especially this one on the right, I don't know if you can, oh, whoops. Okay, let me not do that. Um, there's a picture. See the picture?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That's very unusual.
Is that like a blue and white?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's an indigo with little
Mm-hmm.
white polka dots. Um, but anyway, so yeah, they're always coming up. I don't buy things anymore. Pillowcases. I buy
I was
other
gonna
things.
say things. I think it's just
Yeah,
those actually
I bet.
behind you, they kind of look so perfect. I was actually going to ask if they were reproductions.
Mm,
Yeah, I
Um,
wasn't sure if they were what they were, if they were small things or if they were pillowcases. But yeah,
yeah,
when you moved,
yeah.
I can tell they definitely are.
Mhm.
So
hmm.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess, you know, have you having answered my question, there's more of them than you realized. But I mean, it's unfortunate that they kind of come to market when somebody passes away, but I mean that there's the possibility for these gems to keep appearing. You know,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, that's kind of exciting, you
Mhm.
know, to know like you stumble across one and you know.
And you know this pillowcase behind me, the middle one, which has I know it's not a great picture for you to see, but it has a blue background fabric. I think I found a quilt that matches that in a museum in Texas. It escapes me right now what it was, and I contacted them and I said, "Hey, I think I have a pillowcase that matches a quilt of yours," but nobody cared. They didn't respond back. I
Wow.
care.
Well, that's how you know that's someone who doesn't love them as much as we do, because we would have been
Right.
like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I would have had the pillowcase have been running into the museum like, look,
yeah, it would have been like, "Get her on Air Force One!" Like,
Yeah.
over here. Well, I mean, was it by any chance like the Briscoe Center?
No, I don't think
No. Only because our friend Mary Fonz is beginning her PhD there.
yeah,
And like
so.
we know
if
some
that was the
people.
case, I'd be like, hey, we can get someone on the inside to
I'll have to see if I can dig it out.
um
So it's my turn to ask a
go
question.
for it.
So I had touched upon the gingham because that was such a fascinating lecture that you gave at the Schwenkfelder at the Penn Dry Goods show. So I guess kind of our next question is, you know, tell us about your other research interests and you know, like what have you been working on lately?
Well, the gingham, the cross stitch on gingham, that's my most recent sort of research project. Um, and it's not enough for a book, okay, ladies, maybe a chapter in a book. So if you can think of other things to put with it. Um, and another interest that I've done in the past, though, again, it's not like a book, um, is plush work. Um, and I think you guys know this stuff.
Didn't you also do like a class on plush work too?
Yeah, I've done a couple classes at the
Mhm.
Schwenkfelder and at other historical societies around here.
Mhm.
But I've done a talk on this plush work. It's really fascinating. And I may do another one in the future at the Schwenkfelder, not just on this type of plush work, which is done on a template, but kind of like, well, when you find plush work, what is it? How is it made? Because there's different methods. And what people will say to me when I show them something like this, they go, "Oh, that's chenille." And I say, "No, not really." So that's the title of a future talk. "Oh, that's chenille." No, not really.
Not really.
Uh-huh.
And it will talk about all these different plushwork methods because you'll see things and you go, "God, how did they make that?" You know? So
Mhm. Um, because most of the people that are currently in the chat haven't been to the Penn Dry Goods show and they weren't at the string. Could you just say real quick what your gingham talk was about?
Oh, sure. Um, it was about objects made from gingham fabric, which are decorated with embroidery. 99% of the time cross stitch. So think grandma's aprons with a band of cross stitch across the bottom, children's clothing. And it was the history of this. And a lot of people are familiar with things done maybe in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, the brightly colored gingham aprons with embroidery on it. But what I found was this goes back much further into at least to 1890-ish. There was a lot of stuff done. I found a lot of really interesting resources, women's magazines and stuff like that, and did using it simply newspapers.com. And I could see what was going on in the world of embroidery on gingham through what was being written about in the newspapers of the time. So that's what that was, a talk about that. And that's something I still have collecting interests in, especially always looking for the older pieces, like from the late 19th century, and small things like doll size aprons, these tiny little doll aprons with just a row or two of cross stitch. It's like, somebody did that, they even went to the trouble to decorate this 4 by 4 inch doll apron to make it look like something their mom was making.
So given the opportunity, would you consider doing that talk again?
Oh yeah, I do that talk again.
It was something that
Yeah, that was a fantastic talk.
it was very good.
I was blown away when I learned that that art form or that sewing form was much older, because I was one of those silly people that thought they invented this in the 40s.
That's right. And you were wrong.
And then it wasn't all made by chickens.
It was
That's
not made by
right.
chickens.
Right. What is chicken scratch anyway? Yeah, it's like I wanted to do a slide on like myth busting a little bit, but because I found stories in the newspapers probably in the 1980s when chicken scratch was all the rage, and they interviewed this elderly gentleman who did it as a hobby. And yeah, he said, well, the story goes that, some husband, said to his wife, gee, that looks like chicken scratch. And it was called that ever since, so
I see. So sure, first she slapped him, and then she said,
yeah.
all right, we'll call it chicken scratch.
Yeah.
So Jen says, I had no idea doll aprons exist. I need one.
Oh,
Isn't that kind of how these collecting of things happen for us? Is like we didn't know they
Mhm.
existed, and now like I need one.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
I need a patchwork pillowcase like it's nobody's business.
Mhm.
And I had never ever given any thought whatsoever before to needing anything like that.
Mhm.
But what are we if we're not here to enable everybody?
Exactly.
That's
What
right.
would we do with our lives if we weren't enabling each other?
Tell us the way in which you go about collecting. And what I mean by that is, in my opinion, because I know kind of what your method is, I find that method a little unusual because I don't know anyone else that collects in the way you do, with the ebb and flow
Oh.
of your collection. So could you just tell us a little bit of kind of about your thoughts behind that?
Well, I guess what you mean is I collect things, but then I'll sell some things. And I just, you know, eventually I tire of things. Like I don't need to have them anymore. Pillowcases, say, I don't need all those pillowcases. I needed them when I was writing my book. And for a while I thought I need to own every pillowcase ever made in the world. But I came to realize that wasn't possible. So to make room for other things in the limited space in my brain and in my house, I move things out so they can move other things in.
So for me, that is, I would say you're probably the healthiest collector of us all. Like,
Yes.
for one, the way that I envision this financially, like let's say your collection started out with $500 or something. It's like almost like just cycling out the same money over and over and over. I know it doesn't necessarily work out that way, but I'm
Yeah,
just like,
it never works out that way. I
that's
always
one of
lose
the ways I
money.
think of it. But another thing for me is I feel like in my personal collection, I can maybe cycle through a thing here or there. But in terms of like the collection almost like as a whole, this piece and then that piece, I developed too much attachment to it. And that's where we get into the problem of ending up with overwhelming collection, which luckily, like, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, but as far as pillowcases and selling them, I didn't say one day, I'm going to get rid of all but 10 pairs of pillowcases and, 3 singles. I thought, this box is so full. Let's see what I can part with. And the first year, I parted with the low-hanging fruit. Next year, and I said to myself, I'm never getting rid of any of these other ones because they're all so good. But then the next year rolls around and I think, okay, well, I'm spending money on some other things. Let's go through the pillowcases again. And so it got, culled down to where it is over many years. And I also kind of hooked up with people that I know appreciate pillowcases and will buy them and, for a good price. Unless you're really interested, you're not going to pay a lot. And often people see the size of something and they associate a less value with it, right, than a big quilt. Whereas, if it's rare, even if it's small, it can command a higher price. But I mean, I'm not getting rich by saying this, but just saying that, it was a slow process. I did that with pillowcases. I did that with large quilts. That one's more obvious because they just take up a lot of space. And, you can only show them at a quilt study group for so many years. And it's like, I develop new interests, I guess. And
a tidbit for people is like, make sure you follow Ann on places because she does post things online sometimes when she needs to move something, and you could end up with something really cool. I speak from personal experience.
You could end up with some little mini collections when she divests herself of items.
That's right.
So what are you collecting now? I mean, I know of some of the things you look for because Jill looks for them for you.
Yes.
But what are you into now?
Well, I'm still collecting pot holders.
Jill, that looks familiar.
Yeah. Jill got
that
this
the
one for me. And I think you got this one too. Was that it had corduroy on the back? I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember if that one was me or not. I do know though the pinwheel one. Steph wanted to see the back of that, I believe.
Oh, the back is
I think she asked a question about that.
It's a checker.
I think so. When we were looking at them in the book, I think you asked about something.
Oh, this is a different.
Yeah, because that's not in the book, is it?
These are not in the book.
Oh,
this is the one you found, Jill.
Okay.
Yeah, my question about the ones in the book was like, are they layers of anything? Like how?
That's right.
Yeah, they're, like these two examples, I can feel a very thin batting in it. Kind of like Pennsylvania quilts are really thin often. And this is not going to protect your hand from anything hot. I think these were made for decorative reasons and to give as gifts, but not really. Maybe you could put something on it on the table.
This probably just to keep this table from being scratched.
Yeah.
That's my grandmother had things like that.
This one is quite thick. It doesn't have a hanging thing. It's got corduroy and it's got something else in. So this definitely is kind of like a trivet for some hot. So yeah, not all of them were used. I mean, if they were used, they wouldn't be so pretty now.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's another big thing that you collect that I'm waiting for you to tell us about. You create your own little museum based on that.
I love the Ann's Hallway Museum.
That's right, the Hallway Museum. Yes, I collect doll dresses, children's dresses. It's all related to the fabric, really, from quilts. I had a slide in the talk at Penn Dry Goods how my collecting went, and it had all these arrows that went around and under and over, because big quilts lead to little quilts, doll quilts lead to doll dresses, doll clothing. The doll clothing led to the cross stitch on gingham. So I don't collect any dolls. Okay, people are under the assumption that I'm a doll collector. So no, I just collect the clothes. And they say, why? I said, because they're made out of fabric, and they're adorable, and they have great stitching to look at and all these little details. But I collect pillowcases, but I don't collect pillows. So, you know, um, so yeah, it was really all about the fabric. But when you get these tiny little dresses like doll aprons, it's like hard to resist. They're just
I
so
know.
darn sweet. And they're easy to collect because you can have a lot and nobody knows. They're in the box in the attic and it doesn't take up a whole shelf. There's just a box.
Well, that and please do tell everyone how you like to display them.
Oh, right. Well, I have the hallway museum, which is in my hallway. We live in an old house. It's a very narrow hallway, but I have on the wall yardsticks attached to the wall from which I can hang things. And so I'll put up, usually every season, I'll change out the display. And lately it's been like almost all doll and children's clothing. Like I'll take a color theme or something. Fall's coming up, right? So I'll pull out all the fall colors. And so then we have a, opening of the hallway museum for the season. And I'll make a little video and put it on Instagram.
And it's adorable.
People love it.
Yes.
I'm putting your Instagram in the chat right now. So people, if they don't follow you, they can go check out your displays.
Well, and also you are very generous in sharing pictures on social media of things in your collection. So
Where's Igloo, Jill?
oh, where's Igloo?
Yes, yeah. Igloo's like, I'm done.
He said, okay, that's enough.
So yeah, everybody, I mean, Anne, if you're okay with it, I can actually share one of your hallway. I can just send this to Steph real quick to pull up. Is that okay if we pull something
Yeah.
from social media?
That's fine.
Let me just grab this because you guys, it's just they're just too cute. It's a wonder that like some museum hasn't called her yet to be like a guest curator because it's just so cute.
I always think I missed my calling, which was either to be a librarian or a museum curator or something. But
I mean, I think you could do a little column A, a little column B there. But everyone, please make sure that you are following Anne on social media, because the other thing too, that's not really collecting, but that you currently do is your rug hooking creations.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about next. I'm wondering if you could just talk about that a little bit and how you got into that.
Incoming picture stuff.
Okay.
Also, I mean, it relates, I had pulled out some of my maybe latest collecting interests are little rugs. These are vintage.
Oh my goodness.
Have you posted these online? I feel like I haven't seen them.
I think I may have.
What size are those?
This one is probably about 7 inches square.
Mm-hmm.
This is about 5 by 3, 5 by 4.
Wow, that is.
I mean, are they for dolls?
I think they're just made for, fun, crafty things.
Those are fantastic.
And I don't really know if they're punched or if they're hooked. It could be both.
I've seen some of those little round ones.
Yeah, the round ones you do see once in a while.
Isn't that kind of like a dresser rug
with those round ones?
Yeah, like could be. But see, I got into this stuff a long time ago, making these, right? The plush work. And so it requires wool yarn. So then I started acquiring a lot of yarn, or some yarn. Then I discovered this whole world of independent yarn dyers, the indie yarn dyers, who you can find on Instagram everywhere. And they have these beautiful hand-dyed yarns. So I started getting into those. And, eventually the interest in making pincushions with plushwork pincushions sort of waned. And I thought, what am I going to do with all this yarn? So I started knitting. Then when I got tired of knitting, I thought, well, what else can I do? I could hook rugs with, you can hook rugs with yarn. So let me try that. but I never really liked hooking. I tried it a few times, and then I discovered that you could use this thing called a needle punch to punch a rug instead of hooking it, which is a whole different motion, or you punch down instead of pulling up. And I started doing that with my yarn stash, and I loved doing it. I just loved it. It was easy, and suddenly this creativity that I never knew I had in terms of designing things or drawing things came out. I don't know, because I never, drew a picture. So now I make things like this.
They are so charming. I love them so much.
That's a little golden doodle. And I do all kinds of things, and just sell them on on social media. And I do a show here locally around Christmas time. One of the local Mennonite historical societies has a craft and artisan show, and I make basically to sell there. And it's a lot of fun. It's very creative, and I get to use all this yarn, and I get to buy more yarn, um, because you never have the right color, just like quilting. Oh, there we go. Yeah,
There's the hallway
Museum.
there's
museum.
the hallway museum. Yep.
It's the
So,
sweetest thing.
oh, it is so precious. And then,
I'm
I was just looking through your Instagram. There's the doll apron, or a doll apron is on your Instagram, like
Yeah.
pretty
Oh, yeah,
recent.
recently, yeah.
Yeah, they're so great. They're just
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
find now when I'm out, sourcing and things, because, full disclosure, sometimes I have grabbed some things for Anne. If I see a doll dress or something, one of the criteria I think to myself before I even send you a picture, Anne, is how would this look in the hallway museum?
Does this meet the standards of the Hallway
Yeah.
Museum?
Yep.
Because I mean, there are I think I might have been in Pennsylvania. You didn't end up getting it. I think the price was insane or something. But I remember seeing this like really red dress. It might have been like red with like a black rickrack on the bottom.
Mhm.
And I remember sending it to you, and I think I said like this would look so amazing in the Hallway Museum. But the price was insane.
Yeah.
But she also, for people wondering, sometimes she'll hang like little doll quilts and stuff with
Mhm.
it, and like
Yeah.
I really look forward to the fall display. I like the fall.
Yeah.
I also love me some blue, but
Yeah. Yeah. The
um
fall is good. There's a lot of great fabrics, those 1870s, 1880s kind of madder prints, and
mhm.
yeah.
I also just think it's really cool that you've got the yardsticks up there to hold them on.
Mhm.
That's very interesting looking. What does the family think of these things? Are they supportive? Do they think they're silly?
Oh no, they don't think they're silly.
Oh, good.
You should see the number of bicycles in our basement. Um, they take up a lot more space. No, my husband says things like it smells like an antique store in here.
That sounds great.
I'm like, yeah, of course it does.
I'm like throw in some old book smell too, and like I'm on board.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I was gonna say is because I can't put it in the chat. Steph, you want to stick Anne's Etsy shop into the chat?
Oh yeah, that was what I was
Where
gonna
you
do.
guys, she already has a bunch of her small artworks there already for sale, and she does some commission stuff too. If you got like a pet picture or something, and they come out really great.
Yeah.
I've watched her make them. I
Yeah.
have actually, I believe I bought one of your very first pieces, which was one of that was like a spiralized star scenario.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we first met, you were just getting into it.
Uh-huh. Now you remember.
And then you also had made one that was a black kitty that I bought that just happened to match my black kitty at the time, who has since passed away. So now it's like I have a
Oh.
portrait of my
Mhm.
kitty. Um, one of the last major questions, and then if anyone else has any other questions, please do put them in the chat. But tell us what you do in your professional life, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people would find it a little surprising.
I'm retired. I don't do anything.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
you've had a professional life.
yeah. I was a chemist, a research chemist, and I worked in the chemical industry for Oh, almost 30 years.
So one thing I find really interesting about that is that you understand all this fabric dyeing chemistry thing that I
Yes.
don't.
Well, I have some degree of understanding. That was another area I was very interested in for a while, was trying to understand the chemical nature of all these dyes, right?
Mhm.
But, it turns out that they're very complicated things. Um, I read a paper on Perkins purple. It was an academic paper done by an analytical chemist, and they got like the original sample of Perkins purple from somewhere. It has like, 20 different components in it. So to even understand this one dye, it's very complicated. It's like, okay, here's the compound, and now I can understand how it works the way it does. But it's a gamish of stuff. So
Well,
so I do try to boil it down to, simple terms, like I taught polymer chemists to kindergartners one year. Um, and the teacher for years thereafter would see me at the school and she'd say, I still remember when you came in and taught us about the polymers. And, that was the best thing I ever heard, because she learned a lot too. But if you can make the kindergartners in a way, it's not like in baby talk, but it's put in a way, um, illustrating it with like them holding hands and walking around the room with 2 people versus 10 people. And all of a sudden they understand what a polymer is. So I try to explain things in that way.
I mean, they say the best scholarship in the world can be taught to fifth graders.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but
But
you're on, if you feel like some of the dye stuff is complicated for you, your understanding, even at a confused level, is light years beyond. I'm a social science person, definitely not
yeah,
a hard science.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's all quantum physics to me
Mhm.
in a way that makes no sense. So I would definitely feel more comfortable at least having you to hold my hand
Uh-huh.
while I try to make sense of it. Because you did mention in our chat one night when I had made that comment about if we were reading a book that got into fabrics and dyes and things like that,
Mhm.
that you might come along and hold our hand through
Help
it.
translate for us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
certainly. I'd be happy to.
because all of it to me reads like stereo instructions translated from Japanese.
Yeah.
So,
I know. And you know what? A lot of people write in such a way so that nobody can understand it, because they're fancy academics, I was an academic too. So, but, instead of like putting it in terms that, people can get enough, out of it to get the picture, and not have to act smart.
I actually got in a lot of kerfuffle in grad school for stuff like that because I don't write very fancy. And
Hmm.
I would be like, I feel like, and this is not to undermine anyone else's work, but I feel like the fancier your language, the less substance there is to what you're saying.
Hmm.
So there's really no
Yeah.
need for it to be so overly fancy and complicated. You're purposely trying to exclude people from understanding your words.
Yes, yes,
Um,
agreed.
Or fluff
so
it up to make it sound like it's something
Yes.
when it's not.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hoity-toity.
and then get upset if people aren't understanding or they need clarification or I don't know, your work's not going anywhere because 3 people have read it. Like it's kind of bananas like that. Um, there was one other thing that wasn't on our list and now I can't find it. Steph, did you have any last minute anything while I look for what I was looking for?
Um, let's see. Well, I mean, in talking about your previous profession, I mean, did you come about textiles because, quilts and things like that, just because it kind of is very opposite from the hard sciences of your day life? I mean, did that have anything to do with your appreciation of textiles, or is it just
Um, no, I don't think so. I came to textiles early in life, sewing and all that kind of stuff as
gotcha?
a child.
So okay.
I did, in a way, work was involved in the antique textiles because I had a friend at work who collected antique quilts. And
Ah.
one lunch hour, there were a few of us interested in seeing some, so she brought them in and we went in a conference room and opened up all these quilts, and it was amazing. And and this was like the very beginning of eBay too. So we were all on eBay at work when we shouldn't have been, and looking for quilts to buy. So my friend is the one who got me hooked on all this stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. That would be so fun to just bring your quilts into the conference room.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't think of any job I've ever had where people wouldn't be like, "What are you doing?"
I know. We worked in a research environment. People work very independently, so as long as you get your stuff done at the end of the day and you pour it out into the flask, you're good. You're good.
That actually, and thank you, Steph, because that reminded me what I was trying to look for. I wanted to touch real quick on the fact that you have done some patterns that you based off of pillowcases from the book.
Mhm.
I know that those are technically past, but we had, if anyone isn't in our social media, Anne had shared some old patterns that she had done. One was for Quilt Mania, another one was it AQS that you did?
APQ, American
APQ.
Patchwork and Quilting.
That's it, APQ. And then you sent me another one the other day by it's Woolworks.
Woolworks, yeah.
Yep. Of past patterns that Anne had created based off of the pillowcase that were doll quilts, right?
Yes.
Um, there has been some discussion about potentially doing a little kind of sew along situation like Steph had put together for Don Ronigan's Mary Witherwax, which is
Mhm.
still going on. And we were talking about doing it with Anne stuff. It looks like there's at least 2 patterns that we know we can use based off copyright stuff. Is that still correct?
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Um,
I mean, the it depends on if you like those, that's great. But there's so many other possibilities. If you want it based on a pillowcase or you want others, I have a whole binder full of doll quilt patterns that I published over the years.
oh,
If you want to look through those sometime, I could even bring it. It's just paper copies at
sure.
this point. Um, the other thing is if there's a pillowcase in the book that you want a pattern, let's just do it. I mean, it's not that hard.
But it's one of those where I'm not going to just come out and be like, will you pattern this for me? But if you want to, then
Well, I mean, if it's a 9-patch quilt, it's easy, right?
wait, let's find like the most
Well,
ridiculous one in here.
I feel like one of the what Jill shared with me, I think that was I don't think it was the Quilt Mania one. It was
The Woolworks. I sent you the Woolworks.
isn't it this one?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's one of the more complicated ones in here. So you've already done one of the hard ones.
Well, all you have to do is, trace the shapes. It's not.
Yeah, because it's an applique.
And
Yeah.
I did wool, so I didn't even have to put
Mhm.
seam allowances on mine.
Well, that was the other thing too,
So
is that
precious.
there's plethora of options. So I mean, we could potentially open it up where it's kind of an option and people just pick something. The whole point though is that it is somewhat of a celebration of you and your work that you're doing, because we're doing stuff that you have created,
Mhm.
whether it's a repatterning or not. And like we're all about that. Kelly says I'm in.
Okay.
I'm
So
almost done with Mary Witherwax, so
I
I gotta
I
have
can't
another
believe it.
project.
I can't believe it.
I am barely started with Mary Witherwax because
Yeah.
that one was
The
a
100 days have
big,
passed.
that
You
one
can
was
put it in your rearview mirror.
yeah, that one was a big one. At least something like this is machine done. So at least for me, it would probably be machine done, but it's a lot smaller to work on.
Yeah.
But I would love to look at I'm sure Steph would too, your binder of patterns. If you want to bring it with you, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
Is
And
Anne gonna have to rent like a U-Haul to bring all the
I,
things that we've
I
asked her to
think
bring?
so. I think so.
yeah, is there anything I'm forgetting to ask you to bring?
What's my honorarium going to be for this?
What would you like? Hi, Arlene.
Oh, you can just bring
Arlene.
me a muffin or something.
Hmm.
A muffin.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
a
think we can come up with
latte.
I think we can come up with something a little better than a muffin. But we can definitely work something out there.
Yes, we'll work something out.
Well, we have actually managed to stay at around our hour. It's amazing.
Wow.
Sometimes we're really
Yeah.
naughty and we keep people longer than we told them we would keep them. If anyone else has something last minute, please just pop into the chat there for you while we sit here, and we thank Anne so much for joining us and for writing this amazing book. It's like, I have the most talented friends. It's insane.
Jill is very lucky.
I am. I'm very lucky. My friends are so talented. It's one of those scenarios where it makes you feel, anyone that's listening, that's considering doing any kinds of research or publishing or stuff, surrounding yourself with like really great people like this, makes you feel like you could do it if you wanted to do it, you know? Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
I thank you guys for reading the book, first of all.
it was a really good book.
And,
I didn't know about it for a while.
Doing this forum, because it made me bring out the book off the shelf. I haven't looked at it really for a while. And going through it, I thought, this isn't bad. I'm
No,
very
It's
proud.
very
I'm very
good.
proud of this book.
You should be. It's a fantastic book.
And
Yeah.
so I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed that you guys appreciate it, that everybody out there who read it and who bought, new copies of it instead of buying used copies off of Amazon.
No, we always try to support our authors first.
Yeah, that's very, very, very nice.
Kelly said, "Thank you, Anne, for writing such an accessible book. It's one of the treasures in my library."
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I think that is going to do it for our evening. If you guys haven't gotten this book and you've just been following along, but you're thinking that now you might want a copy, I believe there are still a few copies in Anne's Etsy shop. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are a few copies, and there are more copies in Anne's cupboard too. So
Okay.
and I'm bringing some to the seminar.
Oh yeah, you're proud authors.
They'll be in the book set,
Yeah.
Oh, well, so yeah, guys, if you're coming to seminar, you can get that. And also, every video that is about Anne's book or this interview video here has the link directly to her Etsy to this book for you. So you can grab them on there. The hour flew by.
It did. It was fun.
Really flew by. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much. And
yeah, thank
so
you.
looking forward to seeing you. Oh, and Dawn popped in with a last minute little great book.
Hey, Dawn. Well, we look forward to seeing you at seminar.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
Oh, and yeah, just one last minute little thing here.
Oh, yes.
Right behind me.
Oh.
I hope you're looking forward to.
Oh, that's my honorarium. Oh, Jill.
I'm framing this.
Oh, Jill, that's too much. That's too much. But okay.
Whatever is in that pillowcase / bag is your honorarium.
Oh my God, no! Because Dawn was like, "Watch, it's gonna. I hope it has $1 million in it. I'll share it with you." Anne.
Okay.
Dawn says, "Enjoyed the interview. Thanks." Dee Marie says, "I never knew that they were patchwork pillowcases. Thank you." And Arlene said,
yeah, we
she's
started
like, "Oh my,
at 7,
did you start
Arlene?
at 7?"
Oh no.
Arlene was late to the show. Yeah, Arlene, we always do the interviews at 7 just in case we go over time. We don't want to keep
sorry
people
about
late.
that.
But the replay will be waiting for you, my dear. Don't worry, we only talked about you a little bit. All right, everybody. I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you so much, Anne. We will see Anne at seminar. We will have some content from unframing the we don't know what it really is. So you guys will see more stuff that we'll post when we get back and things like that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay.